What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and we're back from a 1 week hiatus to take on a very, very interesting UFC card from I think from the Apex in Las Vegas. What makes it interesting from a DFS perspective is that there have been quite a few changes in the matchups. Um, some of them don't make too much of a difference from a DFS perspective, and one in particular makes an enormous difference. And it's going to create a very difficult GPP environment, meaning that we'll be able to find you good plays pretty easily, but to get unique and to have a chance to win a lot of money is going to be very, very difficult. The good news is the UFC has in fact pieced this card together after all the variants to at least give us an 11 fight card. So usually my guidelines are that if you have an 11 fight card, the only way you could really turn it into a good GPP card is if the main event is fadeable. And the good news is the main event I do think is fadeable. The problem here is that, well, call it a problem, is that you have a theoretical free square, which we're going to get to. But the good news is that the opponent of the free square might be live as well, so you can get some good leverage. I think it's a very, very intriguing DFS card. Um, Also, what's going to make this fight card difficult is some of these matchups are very, very close. They're very close as far as styles go, and you might have some fights that just don't score all that well because the matchups are just so tight. And it's not like you have like striker versus grappler where if one person wins, they're going to dominate. You have several like grappler versus grappler matchups, which makes it very, very difficult. But we're up for the challenge here, and we'll just kind of get after this kind of fight by fight, and got to make sure that we get the right the right fighters in here. So probably the easiest fight on the card is this first one, being Rayanne Amanda, I think Lopez or whatever she's calling herself nowadays, against Alice Ardeline. Um, so they have her listed as actually DeSantos here. And this is just a fight that, whether it's 11 fights, 10 fights, 8 fights, 47 fights, it's just a fade. Okay, you have very little finishing upside from either of these fighters, and the big favorite here, she's minus 275 and she's a full 9,200. You're going to need just an inside the distance line that she just does not possess here. And you have, what is this? What are they calling her again? They're calling her Dos Santos. Um, yeah, so that's Ardeline up here. I don't know where she went. Amanda by unanimous decision. Split majority. I can't even find her inside the distance line here. It's extraordinarily poor. Rayanne Amanda. So Amanda, that's what we're looking for. Sorry about this. Round one, minus 30. I mean, this is round two, round three. It's all really, really bad. Where is this? Amanda inside the distance. There it is. Plus 350. I mean, at 9,200. No good. No bueno. Unless you're going to tell me she has an incredible amount of takedown upside, uh, it just doesn't exist. So this fight is a full fade. And so what it really does is it creates almost a 10 fight card. So what order are we going to do this in? I guess moving up the list from on the DraftKings slate, because this is where we know who's fighting, is Balaji Oki against a replacement fighter, M. Aswell Jr. And Oki was originally supposed to be fighting Markel Medeiros, and he was a pretty decent favorite there, but he's now a much bigger favorite. So you have actually Oki was only a minus 170 against Medeiros. Now he's minus 365. So at minus 365, you really are looking at an implied price of more like 9,300, 9,400, but he's still sitting here at 8,900. So on straight optimals that sometimes are just based on, win odds, he's going to look like just almost a lock at 8,900. However, if you look at the inside the distance line, it's not particularly exciting. Oki, we don't even have the actual inside the distance line yet, but you can at least see that the over 2.5 rounds is minus 150. So this fight is favored to go pretty far. So it's not as if he's a theoretical lock here at 8,900. Now, what he does have going for him, he does have some takedowns, but I don't know. I've seen this a lot. You have this fighter who's fighting a replacement fighter. He sees he's a big favorite. Sometimes they don't go for the wrestling. They sometimes say, you know what, I could beat this guy however I feel like it. I'm just going to go ahead and just strike with the guy. Not to mention the fact that in his last fight, despite him getting 2 takedowns, he ended up getting subbed. I think it's possible if he just kind of keeps this fight on the feet. And if he keeps this fight on the feet, you're left with probably a very pedestrian inside the distance line. So I think that he's going to be probably, I guess, a little over owned here because of his huge win odds. I don't particularly think he's a very exciting DFS play, though. Now, again, he could, end up going for, all the takedowns here. But it doesn't seem like that's his main, his modus operandi. Okay. Um, so here's another fight, which I think is, I won't say full fade because listen, the minus 350 is nothing to sneeze at, but it's certainly somewhat deceiving. All right, so Trevin Giles against Andre Gustafson. Yeah, so this is to me one of, I don't want to say the core plays, but because obviously a couple of much better plays, but I think Gustafson is a very, very strong DFS play here. He carries with him an aggression, which helps DFS for volume. He carries with him some wrestling and clinch upside, which is going to help for DFS. And Trevin Giles is not particularly exciting. He does have a good jab. The thing is, though, is that Trevin Giles does, in fact, have decent wrestling. Okay. I think that Trevin Giles could be a pretty sneaky GPP play here because he's coming off of 3 losses. By the way, each one of these fighters that Trevin Giles lost to would be probably minus 400 against Gustafson. Okay. Um, you know, Giles, he fought Morales, Duplessis. I mean, like, what's the guy going to do? You know? So, not to say that we should excuse him for everything, but he does have some skills here. So, if people get too crazy and play too much Gustafson because of all these losses and Giles doesn't look particularly exciting, I think that Giles could be a pretty sneaky, as much sneaky as you could be in an 11 fight card, GPP underdog here. So I think both of these fighters are very, very playable. And I hope that when I sim all this stuff and get more into the lineup construction piece, I hope I get to a lot of this fight. Because while I do think that people are going to get to Gustafson, I just think that Giles is going to end up under owned. I think people listen. I'm the first person to say, don't reward guys just for losing, but this is like a dramatic change of of competition here. Um, Listen, not that his wins were any great shakes. I mean, against Preston Parsons and Koski was terrible. I mean, he did beat Roman Delice. I mean, what are you going to do here? How did he beat him with only 27 significant strikes? Wow, that's rough. Um, but I don't know. I have this weird feeling that Giles is live in this particular situation. Anyway, so I do like both of them in GPP in DFS. Jordan Levitt versus Kurt Hollabaugh. I mean, Okay, let's take a look at the inside the distance line. By the way, we didn't even look. Sorry about this. At the inside the distance line of that Gustafson fight. I'm sure it's not great. Let's see. Gustafson inside the distance. That's actually pretty good. Look at this, plus 115 or whatever. Yeah, I mean that fight. I'm telling you, that fight's the nuts. And I don't know why I think I'm going to do this. I think Giles could be my sneaky stuff here because you're going to get to a really really super duper high owned mid range fighter. So anything in the mid range that's not going to be as high owned, it's going to be pretty good. And look at Giles inside the distance line. It looks terrible, right? Plus 400. I don't know. I'm just kind of feeling it. I know that's not the greatest analytical thing to say, but anyway, Jordan Leavitt versus Kurt Hollabaugh. I mean, neither of these fighters have a particularly good inside the distance line. Boy, Levitt's only plus 300 inside the distance. And yet, I mean, he's got such a freaking grappling edge over Hollabaugh. I mean, Hollabaugh gets taken down by everybody, and Levitt's got all kinds of jiu-jitsu in his back pocket. He did take down Paddy Pimblett 3 times before he got subbed. Took down Puelas, but that's not a big deal. He got murdered by Chase Hooper, but Chase Hooper doesn't lose to anybody nowadays. Got a first round KO against Martinez. I don't know. I think that Levitt's live. I just think that there's got to be more upside elsewhere on the card. So I think that Levitt is probably a okay GPP play. I would probably rather play him than Oki, I think, just because of maybe he's going to be lower owned. And then on the other side of this, I just can't see a reason to play Hollabaugh here. It's just doesn't have a good inside the distance line. He probably has a style disadvantage. And it's not like you're getting any particular leverage against Levitt here. So I don't know. I think Levitt's okay. I don't really like Hollabaugh at all. All right, so here's one of several kind of very, very close, I think, grappling matchups. Uh, Jafel Filio and Alan Nascimento, both super, super strong grapplers here. And this could go, I mean, these things usually go 3 ways. One, which is the way you're going to hear about in most podcasts and analyses, is that whenever you have like 2 grapplers, the grappling edge kind of cancels each other out and ends up being kind of a boring striking affair, sort of. Um, that is certainly one way it could go. There are 2 other ways it could go. The second is that if they're both exclusively grapplers, but one is just better than the other one, sometimes that inferior grappler just has no answers, and the what ends up happening is that the slightly superior grappler just smashes. Okay, and people are not ready for it. This has happened before. And the third thing that could happen is that it's also friendly for DFS. Is there's all kinds of even grappling exchanges, which with each person getting like reversals and takedowns and reversals of the reversal and things like that. And those points really add up. And on an 11 fight card, you know what becomes very live in a situation like that are fight stacks. And I almost never recommend fight stacks, especially in GPPs. But the times I will recommend them is when you have like a mid-range fight where you could have all kinds of activity on both sides. And I think that on this slate, I might end up going for that kind of third option as far as the way this fight could go and play both of these guys. They're both very, very strong grapplers. Filho, look at some of the inside the distance lines here. I have imagined Filio's inside the distance lines going to be better. Nascimento's like plus 325. Filio is what? It's got to be better than that, right? They're both pretty much the same. But I'll show you something interesting. For someone with an inside the distance line of plus 300, I mean, just look at this dude. He submits guys every single fight he wins. I don't know exactly what why this inside the distance line is just so low. He's got one decision in all of his wins, and that was in 2012. I mean, I don't know. I think this fight is something you have to target. I think you have to play both these guys, and I think that you could even play them both together. I mean, really. And how many times have you seen me recommend that on the stream? Like almost never. Okay, but you have a short card. You have a mid-range fight. You got all kinds of activity that can happen from both sides. I mean, look at this Nascimento stat line here, like against Hadley. Okay, forget the significant strikes for a second. So he's got 2 takedowns and 3 reversals. You know what? These are the types of things that can really, really add up. The only thing that bothers me is that neither of these guys are really piling on the significant strikes. So that therein lies kind of the problem. But I definitely think this fight is kind of mandatory to play both sides. Speaking of which, Zach Reese versus Dusko Tudorovic. I mean, this fight is almost certain. Whatever I was going to say, certain to finish. I need both these guys just don't know how to defend themselves, and they both just love to get in these firefights. Let's look at the inside the distance line here. I mean, Reese inside is minus like 200. I mean, that is just an elite inside the distance line. And even Tudorovic, even though he's a pretty decent sized underdog here at plus 200. I mean, he's only like plus 300 inside the distance, which is very, very fair. So I think that both these guys, this is another kind of key fight on the board here. Reese certainly 9,200, and Todorovic at 7K, I think is certainly a punt that you should get behind with a plus 300 inside the distance line against somebody probably going to be pretty popular. So I think this is a very important key fight. Caitlin Vieira versus Macy Chasson. This is the second of 3, what I think are very, very competitive grappling matchups. What I'm trying to process, though, is how this might be different from the Nascimento Filho fight. Because on the one hand, there's the pricing's better, right? It's 8,208K. However, I just don't see the finishing upside for either of these fighters as opposed to the Filho and Nascimento situation. I mean, either of these fighters can probably get some takedowns, but the thing is that Vieira has such good takedown defense that I think this is going to be the one that busts. I really do. And it's not going to be the first time I underestimated how important it is to have this 8,200 8K fight. But I just think it's going to be tough for either fighter to score a ton here. So either of these fighters win and get 80. I don't think that you should be upset. You know what I mean? If you're just looking at the fight, like if Vieira wins, going to get a bunch of control time, whatever it is, have a good performance, get 80. Macy Chasson, if she can get the takedowns going, maybe she gets 80. In the absence of a finish, though, I mean that's really what you're talking about with wins with these fighters. Where the Filho Nascimento fight, I mean, you have Filho who literally like finishes every fight he wins. I mean, like that's a much better situation. So I think that the Vieira Chasson fight is very competitive and just a really, really, really interesting matchup from an MMA perspective. But from DFS, I don't know. I mean, each time I think to just pass it, though, I think how is this analysis different than the Filho fight of these two grapplers? Really, why can't this be that have the same 3 outcomes? So I am going to think about this a little more, but for now, I'm going to consider Vieira and Chasson certainly, second, third tier at best. All right, Jacoby Lopez. I think this one is interesting. I think I just sort of know how the winner is going to win here. So Jacoby is certainly a better striker. He's almost like world-class kickboxer. So he's going to have a really big edge there. So if he can kind of get that working, he can win. He can get a KO. I mean, he should be able to win. It's minus 200. He can get a KO. He can He can win a decision. Like these are two ways he can win. And Jacoby inside the distance at plus 170, that's just okay. You know, it's not great. He has no takedown upside. So I don't think that Jacoby side is going to be any better than, say, Oki or, well, I mean, Oki's got a worse inside the distance line probably, but more takedown upside. Leavitt's got a worse inside the distance up line, but more takedown upside. I think all three of those are kind of the same. Um, the Lope side is pretty intriguing, you know, because on the one hand, you see this 5 takedown performance here, you know, and if he is going to be, you know, going for these takedowns, which he probably should be doing against Jacoby. I mean, if he wants to stand and bang or get into a kickboxing match with like a world class kickboxer, it's probably not the right idea. So you do have to kind of play Lopes and Lopez, whatever this one is. So I think that in this fight, I think I prefer Lopez if I had to pick one of them. So I would say for DFS, so I would say what's his name? Jacoby, maybe 15-20% of him, and maybe 20-25 of Lopez. I just think that Lopez in his wins is just more alive to score a bunch and be in the optimal than if Jacoby wins, where he could certainly miss the optimal if he wins sort of like a striking based decision, which is very, very live. All right, so here is like the real fight. So Billy Goff, he was supposed to be fighting uh, somebody. I forgot who he was supposed to fight at the beginning, but nonetheless, he was like a minus 130 favorite. So that fight got rescheduled, and now he's fighting Brahimaj. And now, if you look at the odds, he's minus 360. So, unfortunately, the way DraftKings works is they can't reprice everything. So now you're stuck with a minus 360 favorite being priced as if he's minus 130. So that really makes him a theoretical lock, you know? Um, in addition to that, his inside the distance line at minus 120, I mean, it is just elite for his price. I mean, you just don't get that at 8,300 because he's really not supposed to be 8,300. So all of this is to say that you know you ran this through a computer and say which is going to be in the optimal, like the most amount of times, it would certainly be Goff. Okay. And you should start with the idea that he should be in all of your lineups. However, GPPs are funny games. And when I say that, I mean this. Everybody and his mother, father, grandfather, whatever, knows exactly what I just said. And Goff is showing up as a theoretical lock there. So one of the important things that you can do in playing UFC is identify what is a clear lock play and just see if his opponent has a shot also. Okay, because if you can get the opponent of a theoretical lock that looks decent, not even great, but decent, that provides all kinds of leverage against that, you know, it's going to be a 60, 70% owned fighter. So let's take a look at Brahimaj here. And, you know, his inside the distance line at plus 330, I mean, it's pretty good given his price, which is 6,700. See, the good news is he wasn't priced early. So he is a fair price, right? So he's a fair price with a decent enough inside the distance line and just insane leverage against Goff. The easy way to play this, and we'll get into more lineup construction when we do the lineup construction video, is to basically go all in on this fight and play maybe market weight of Goff. In other words, if he's 3.5 to 1 to win, maybe play 75% of Goff and 25% of Brahimaj. But you certainly have to play a decent amount of Brahimaj here. And if you're really aggressive, you play, you know, almost 50-50 Brahimaj over Goff. You know, it just depends how many lineups you play. And also, importantly, is the characteristics of the rest of your lineups. Like, you don't really want to play Goff in lineups with you have a lot of other chalk. So something we'll get into when we do the GPPs. But this fight is obviously one that you have to just jam. Okay. Okay. Um, Gamrot versus Ludovic Klein. This is like the third of the very, very difficult grappling matchups to call here. Now, I mean, you have both of these guys that just get a bunch of takedowns. I mean, Klein, his last five fights, two, 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 one, two, whatever. And then Gamrot is even more egregious. I mean, 5, 11. You know what I mean? 1, 4, 4. I mean, all the guy does is take people down. And so this could go a bunch of different ways here. Um, so how is this fight any different than these other grappling matchups? I definitely think that this fight has less finishing upside than the Filio fight, but I would say it's got more, I guess. It's a more scoring upside than the Chase fight. I don't know about that even. Um, I think that you should probably play some of this, but you can't be disappointed if this fight doesn't deliver. You know, if these two fighters like get in these grappling exchanges, and let's just say that Klein does not get taken down by Gamrot, I mean, then you have a pretty boring fight. I mean, honestly. Um, so I'm probably going to get to both these guys, but as far as priorities go, I'm probably off of this. You know, I've just seen these Gamrot fights before. I mean, listen, there have been some which have scored a lot. Like, listen, you get 11 takedowns, you're scoring. That's just the way it is. Here you get 6 takedowns. It was a 5-round fight, so you get the opportunity for more control time. 3 rounds, I don't know, man. 3-round Gamrots are it's not exactly the greatest scoring environment. Okay, I'll just say this is usually where fantasy points go to die. So we'll have to revisit this one, but right now I'll consider this one like a B maybe or B minus. And then you get to the main event, which is Blanchfield against Barber. And this fight can go different ways too. You know, like Blanchfield is actually not the greatest wrestler in the world, but she's very, very good with her jujitsu and her grappling. So, I mean, look, Barber probably wants to keep this on the feet. I don't even know what Blanchfield wants to do. You know, like her last 2 fights, she put up 100 significant strikes over 5 rounds against, I mean, I would say 2 of the best strikers around, right? Fioro and Rose Namajunas. Um, this is a sneaky big win for her. You know what I mean? Like doing this without getting the sub, got the takedowns when she needed them. I think this was a big win. Remember, Fioro, we were yelling at Blanchfield, how's she not getting these takedowns? Fioro's takedown defense, as we saw against Valentina, is beyond elite. You know, like Fioro is actually winning the wrestling against her, against Valentina. So not being able to get to her and get takedowns is not as big of a deal as maybe we thought it was at the time. Um, so I don't know. I don't know which way this fight's going to go, but the fact is that it does not have to smash. Okay, like Blanchfield can certainly win and score 85, 90 points. Okay, definitely could happen. Um, I don't know if Barber can win without being optimal though, just because she's 7,100. Um, I'll tell you what, like really, I won't say concerns me. I think all these takedowns are pretty sneaky. You know, do you think Barber might actually be going for takedowns here? I mean, there are some fights where she's gotten them. I mean, she's pretty well rounded here, and she also has quite a bit of power. I mean, I don't know. I think that if I had to pick one fighter from this fight to play in DFS, it would probably be Barber. Um, so I don't know. I think that obviously Blanchfield is a solid play, but in GPPs, I think that I can get away from this one. I think that I can play Barber or nothing here. I think it's much more important to play someone like I don't know, like Zach Reese, who's just going to always score 100 when he wins this fight. I wouldn't say always, but then to play Blanchfield. I don't know. I'm trying to think about this again. And this is kind of a first look, I suppose. We are going to do a lineup construction video, but just to kind of revisit all this. So Goff, Brahimaj, you have to do this. Okay. Goff is clearly the best play on the slate, and Brahimaj is obviously the clear leverage against that. And then you have these weird grappling matchups, with Nascimento Filio and Gamrot, the Gamrot fight, the Chason fight. Maybe you even take shots at again game stacking or fight stacking that more intriguing one, that being that Filio fight. Um, you could certainly fade the Artelene fight, the Oki. I don't know about that one. Keep getting back to this fact that this Giles might be a strong underdog here. It's such a stupid looking play to make, as the kids like to say, or as the older people I'd say, it's so dumb. It just might work. Okay. And then you could put Lopez in here. You don't have to put Brahimaj and that. So remember, if you're going to be playing Goff, you're going to have to get, a little crazy at your other positions. So you play Lopes and Giles with him, and then play Zach Reese, for example, and then one of these Filios. Then you can even play another big favorite if you want, or you can play Nascimento, something like this. Anyway, we'll get into lineup construction a little later in the week, but it's a very, very intriguing card. It all kind of is going to hinge on how you deal with this Goff thing, and how much you really put into this main event. That is going to do it for now. Good luck, everybody.